Let's welcome Mike Sielski back to Philly Pressbox Radio. Mike, welcome.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Hey, Mike. As we said, lots to talk about. Let's go to the Sixers, first of all. The NBA Finals got underway last night. The Sixers aren't there. Dario Saric, Mikal Bridges, Drew Holiday are there. The current Sixers are not. What do Daryl Morey and company have to do this offseason? And is it a must that Ben Simmons is sent packing?
First things first, Chet. You forgot Willie Green, who's an assistant coach for the Phoenix Suns.
There
so
you
let's
go.
Get all those ex-Sixers in there. He's not a process Sixer, but he is an ex-Sixer.
Willie could shoot.
Yes, he could. Great guy, too. Great guy. What do the Sixers have to do in the offseason? I think they have a really challenging few months ahead of them. Because in a way, they're in the worst possible position that any franchise can be. They've got a player who everybody knows they have to move. And that's a bad thing because everybody knows they have to move him. And the idea of moving Ben Simmons in the wake of what happened in that Atlanta series and really throughout the playoffs is going to be a Herculean task for Daryl Morey, I think. It would not surprise me if Simmons were still on the roster at the beginning of next season, just because Morey is going to wait for what he thinks the absolute best deal could be within the market. And if that means he has to wait till, the season is a week old or training camp's 2 weeks old, then I think he'll do it. But yeah, look, for a multitude of reasons, they've got to move on from him, I think. For all the good that he does on the court, as great a defensive player as he is, the guy who's guarding him is always going to be better because Simmons is going to, when push comes to shove, Simmons is going to pass the ball and run to the dunker spot and hope nobody throws him the ball back. So you can't have that in your offense. You can't have your point guard completely abdicate responsibility both for himself and for his entire team within an offensive set. So something's going to have to happen. Whether it can and to what degree it might help the Sixers remains to be seen.
Well, Mike, sticking with Ben Simmons, as the season unfolded, we talked about this last week, I guess it was, I have a trouble with a guy just all of a sudden turning bad. He turned bad. And, we know the talent's there. We've seen him be productive. We've seen him be a star. What happened? Well, I mean, just a mental thing, but what in the world do you think happened to Ben Simmons?
There's a lot of theories out there, Bill. Obviously, I think the mental component, if you're ranking all the reasons that this happened, the mental component to this is the largest and the most important one. I mean, I've done pieces about Ben's shooting form and how bad it is, the elbow flaring out and all of that stuff. It's beyond that now. I mean, he had a mental, emotional fear about going to the foul line in that series against the Hawks. And he's going to have to do something to work through that, whether it's a sports psychologist. It's not Instagram videos of him shooting jump shots in an empty gym or in a pickup game. It's got to be something deeper than that. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and this person brought up the fact that Simmons, and this would apply to Markelle Fultz too, because I had noted that the Sixers in back-to-back drafts with the number 1 overall pick drafted players who not only are poor shooters, but got the yips about shooting. Like they had a mental block about it. And this person noted that both Simmons and Fultz were great players at mediocre college programs. They were kind of allowed to do whatever they wanted to do in that year that, Simmons was at LSU and Fultz was at Washington. And if you think about it, their rises to that point were similar too. I mean, Ben was playing in Australia where basketball is terrific, but he's not playing in the AAU system of America. He's not playing at the absolute highest youth levels. Markelle Fultz had a very rapid rise from being just another high school player in the Washington, D.C. area to being, freshman of the year at Washington and the number 1 overall pick in the draft, even though Washington went 9-22 while he was in the one season he was there. And I wonder if there's something about that once a guy like that gets to the highest level of his sport, gets to the NBA and encounters some adversity, how does he handle it? Is he equipped to deal with it? And certainly there have been players in the past and athletes in the past from similar circumstances, similar backgrounds to those two guys who were able to handle it. But I just wonder if their paths to the NBA contributed at all to the troubles they faced since they've gotten to the league.
Hey, Mike, you wrote a piece 10 or 12 days ago about Joel Embiid and the fact that he's 27, he's injury prone, and just how important he is to their future. You made the Yao Ming comparison regarding age and injuries. Is there anything the Sixers can do to try to keep him relatively healthy? He seems to hit the floor hard 3 or 4 times every game.
What they could do, if they're able to do it, Chet, is get him another player, another scorer who can take some of the pressure off of him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something I noted in a previous column was that, he committed 8 turnovers in Game 7. And everybody looks at that and goes, that's terrible. You can't have that happen. But part of the reason he commits 8 turnovers is because he's taking the ball at the top of the key. He's 7'2" tall. Mm-hmm. And that's a byproduct of what they have around him in Simmons, a point guard who can't create his own shot, doesn't want to shoot, and Tobias Harris, who needs to get the ball in certain locations on the floor to play to his strengths. And if the Sixers didn't have to rely on Embiid as much as they do, then the chances are pretty good that his career would be extended because you wouldn't be relying on him so much. There wouldn't be as much demand and wear and tear on him because he wouldn't have to be out there as much. Or, when push came to shove in the closing minutes of a game, you give the ball to a Damian Lillard or another scorer or somebody like that. They tried to do that with Tobias Harris. It didn't work for, time after time. So, to answer your question, Chet, I think, a human being that big and that heavy as Embiid, and I don't mean to suggest he's overweight. I just mean that he's 7'2" and athletic and ripped, is going to encounter, there's always going to be that risk. And I think that that to me is the Sixers' primary concern. As much as we're worried about Simmons, Embiid, there's been so much wear and tear in his body already that one bad fall, if he goes down, they're going to have to break the whole thing up. They're going to have to do that. And that really, to me, is the ultimate failure of the process, so to speak, that they went through over these last 7 years, is that he's all really they have still offensively. They don't have any other pieces around him to take the heat off of him. He's still the alpha and the omega of everything all the time. And they had opportunities to put in more pieces around him and weren't able to keep the right ones around him or find the right ones around him.
Well, Mike, to follow up on that, you said in the opening that there's a lot of work to be done over the next couple months. And if I'm reading what you're saying now is they need to blow this thing up. They're not going to get it done with Harris and Simmons as a supporting cast for Embiid. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I don't think they're going to trade Tobias Harris, and I'm not sure they could, Bill. Simmons is a hard situation because everybody can see what the problem is. It's totally naked to everybody. He doesn't want to shoot. He can't shoot. It gums up your offense. It causes problems amongst his teammates. His teammates can see it. Watch that clip of him passing up the dunk in Game 7. And Joel Embiid throws his hands in the air like, what are you doing? I mean, it's obvious what effect this is having on a team. And so every other team around the league is going to know that and going to weigh whether to bring that sort of problem onto their roster and kind of judge whether they think they can fix it. Do I think they need to blow it up? No. I mean, insofar as I think Tyrese Maxey is a player with a ton of potential. I'd love to see him develop. I think if Matisse Thybulle can develop any semblance of an offensive game, he has a chance to be a terrific player. I already think pound for pound, he might be the best defensive player in the league. They have Harris is a fine player. He's just not they gave him a max contract, which I'm not sure he's worthy of. But they did what they had to do. I guess that was the market at the time. So you're kind of going to move forward with those guys unless you're going to unless Morey's going to put a package together that involves some of those guys and brings back a true superstar to pair with Embiid. You're going to roll with that and see what you can get for Simmons.
Mike, let's switch over and talk a little Phillies. Later in the show, Bill and I are going to give some grades to, some of the key players. I want to ask you about Joe Girardi, though. Yeah, the team has won 4 of the last 5 out of 7. They're 4 games out in the mediocre NL East. But I don't think Girardi's been all that. What is your grade for Joe Girardi this year?
Chet, I don't know what it is with Joe, but he can see, like we all can, the condition of the Phillies bullpen. And yet, with the exception of that one Aaron Nola start against the Marlins last week where he was at 4 2/3 innings and, gave up the 6 or 7 straight hits in a row and Joe was trying to get him through the 5th inning. I've never seen a manager who was so desperate to get into such a bad a bullpen as I have with Girardi. And, this is not we're building for the future kind of moment for the Phillies. We poured a whole lot of resources into this, and we're trying to win right now. And if you're going to pull Zach Wheeler, you know, because he's at 114 pitches, even though he's cruising, if you're going to pull Zach Eflin, even though he's pitching a shutout, if you're going to go to your bullpen as often as he does, you know, you better have Mariano Rivera and, David Robertson in his prime back there. And they don't have the furthest thing from it. That's the thing I don't get, is why he is so quick all the time to dive into a bunch of relievers who don't perform and haven't performed. If the Phillies are going to make a run at this thing, and I'm not sure they can, those three guys at the top of their rotation are going to drive them: Wheeler, Nola, Eflin. And you got to ride them out. And I know baseball's different. I know that these guys are making a lot of money and managers don't, and teams don't want to burn them out or risk an injury. But at some point, you got to rely on a starter to get you home, and just say to the bullpen, you know what, guys, it doesn't matter that you're fresh. Zach Eflin, 7 innings in, 8 innings in, is a better option than whatever. Pick a reliever coming out of the bullpen who's fresh and who's going to walk the leadoff hitter and get everybody stressed.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny to me because we know Joe is a great baseball man as a player and as a successful manager, but it almost looks like he doesn't have a feel for the game, or he's not letting the feel for the game manage the game. He's going by the charts and he's going by the analytics, and he's making these decisions, lefty, righty, at the plate, even when he's pinch hitting for his hottest hitter at times. It looks like he just isn't feeling the game, and maybe that's the new way, and I don't like it.
Well, here's the thing, Bill. Girardi's been that way for a while. Like, this was the criticism of him in New York. I was up working in New York and covered the Yankees a tiny bit in 2010, 2011, 2012. This was the complaint about him then, that he was Binder Joe, that you just flip through and find the right page and boom, punch the decision in the computer and it spat it back out. And all we have to do, and this isn't a situation involving Girardi, but all you have to do is go back to Game 6 of the World Series last year, where Kevin Cash of the Tampa Bay Rays makes a decision that is totally divorced from the reality on the field and any sense of feel and humanity and reading the circumstances of a situation. And those things matter. I always, when this discussion comes up, and I see both sides of it to a degree, but when this discussion always comes up, I always think of something Charlie Manuel said after the Phillies won the World Series in 2008. If you guys remember, out of the chute, when Game 5 picked up again after the rainstorm, he sent Jeff Jenkins up to pinch hit for whoever it was. I forget, maybe the pitcher. And somebody asked him after the game, why did you send Jenkins up in that situation? Jenkins had been a disappointment all year. And as it turned out, Jenkins rocketed a double to right center field, and he ended up scoring, or the pinch runner form ended up scoring, and the Phillies took the lead and, of course, went on to win the game. And Charlie said, Jeff Jenkins is a good low ball hitter. The pitcher who the Rays had in the game throws a lot of low pitches. I thought it was appropriate to send Jeff Jenkins up there. I mean, Charlie didn't say it that way. He said it the way Charlie says it, but you get the sense. And it was just like, you know what? I got to feel, I've watched Jeff Jenkins hit for a full season. I've seen the scouting report of this pitcher. Looked like a good match to me. Let's roll the dice. Now, maybe that would have failed in another situation, 9 out of another 10 times. But it worked in that situation, and that's what you pay a manager for. It's not just to follow the binder or follow the formula or, go back to Doc Rivers in the Sixers-Hawks series. Like, he's still playing 10 guys in Game 7 of this. Like, your season's on the line here. The circumstances are different. Things have to change. And sometimes you can't manage that way or coach that way all the time, but you got to balance the two sides of it. And I wonder if Girardi does that enough.